So to give you a brief overview of what Carla and I are both going to talk about, to start off, we'll give some ideas about what a patient registry is and why they're needed, a few different articles on them from research institutions such as the NIH. And then the second portion of it will include updates that we've gone so far in terms of the registry, as Sarah mentioned. And then the third part, Carla will show some images of what information is available on a patient registry as a participant. Of course, a great statement I'd like to make in that is it is not a part of our registry we have right now. We are still working to get it off the ground. It is just an illustration of what a patient registry can provide back to the patients apart from some sort of research that's being done with the registry. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So in terms of the National Institute of Health, this is a very lengthy but informational description of what a patient registry is and why it is needed. So the registries can provide healthcare professionals and researchers with first-hand information about people with certain conditions, both as an individual group and over time. So this may help answer questions as to why late-stage metastasis happens and how it's treated. Why do those patients respond? And it'll increase our understanding of that condition. Some registries collect information that can be used to track trends about the number of people with the disease, treatments, and more. Other registries invite people to sign up to be contacted about participating in clinical research. These ask very basic questions about health history that would help determine whether someone is possibly eligible to join a research study. Participation in a registry is likely to increase what we know about a specific condition, help healthcare professionals improve treatment, and allow researchers to design better studies on a particular condition, including development of testing and new treatments. So it's definitely a mouthful, but it's a very good reason that we need patient registries. A lot of other organizations do have patient registries, such as cholangiocarcinoma. A lot of other rare cancers mentioned with BAP1 mutations also have patient registries that are driving instrumental research to be done in their individual fields. Moving on, for a more broader perspective of why a registry is needed, from UORD, NORD, and CORD, along with the patients they represent in Europe and North America, recognizing that rare disease patient registries constitute key instruments for increasing knowledge in rare diseases, supporting fundamental clinical and epidemiological research. So epidemiological is a mouthful to say, but in other words, it's understanding who, what, and why. So that will help us boil down to an answer of why this is occurring in a more broad spectrum apart from individual institutions, because this will be reported by us as patients or anyone else that's connected to a patient that may have the ability to give information on that patient. And post-marketing surveillance of orphan drugs and treatments used off-label. So again, these are questions that have come up by us as patients that we may not have good answers to because it hasn't been reported yet. So the patient registry will help us answer some of these questions that we have as patients that we ask our clinicians. Furthermore, a great importance for patients and their families, they can be instrumental in supporting health and social service planning. Rare disease patient registries are powerful. They're cost-effective instruments to improve the overall quality care, quality of life, and survival of patients. So moving on, a very basic question and answer of what is a registry? It's an organized system that uses observational study methods to collect uniform data. So that data will be provided on behalf of the Registry Steering Group. We will determine the questions that will be asked and how that data will be used. More on that to come, along with an institutional review board that will oversee the registry. So it's in clinical questions and any other questions. They will evaluate the outcomes for a population defined by a particular disease, condition, or exposure, and that serves as a predetermined scientific, clinical, or for policy purposes. So this is from the Evaluating Patient Outcomes User Guide. This is definitely a document that we are actively using in part of our patient registry group. What is a patient-powered registry? So this is from the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. It's focused to more directly on patient and family members' needs. So this is what patients need. This has the emphasis of what a patient is going to need throughout their journey. A registry will support such things as these questions. And the family members advocate organizations that have created and operated a patient-powered patient registries and research networks since 1995. These registries, and networks are distinguished from research-generated registries, and the research registry or network and the research it yields is managed by patients and family members themselves. So a very powerful thing that we as patients can contribute in terms of our own information into this registry. So often the disease advocacy organizations or network of organizations receives advice and input from the scientific board of advisors. So again, going back to the fact of an IRB and a steering group that provides input for a registry. So the Cure Om Registry objectives. I definitely want to underscore the fact that this is a questionnaire that went out to the community last year, and the number one objective that us as patients and caregivers identified was to increase the likelihood of development of effective treatments. So that is our number one priority that we have identified from the patient community. Coming down, we have 3 other objectives. I'll somewhat paraphrase them. So we have to capture and record the global cases of ocular melanoma and standardized patient-reported online registry. So this is going to be international. As a couple of other presenters have alluded to, Sarah is working with other organizations that are looking to partner with us so we can get an international view. So a lot of the registries that currently exist are on an institutional or a state level. So of course, all of our clinicians have their own registry for their own institution that does not get shared. And same thing with states. So it's kind of a very myopic view of it where we're trying to expand that by us providing our own data into a registry. The next objective would be to enhance the understanding and the variability, progression, and natural history of uveal melanoma. So natural history is going to be understanding what are the outcomes, from the beginning to the end? So from initial onset to the very end, how are patients treated? What are the treatment methods? How are they diagnosed? How are they misdiagnosed? I know me, myself, being misdiagnosed, I have a lot of questions on that, and there's not a lot of answers because there's no statistics on it. There's no registry that we can provide input and say, this is something that's important to our community that we need to know about. And finally, we're looking to increase the collaboration between patients, clinicians, and researchers that could lead to discoveries that will improve the outcomes for patients affected by this disease. So a very small tidbit from the FDA, they're indicating that registries are important to have patient-focused information on the population that will enroll and look more broadly at patient-related issues and patient preferences. So now we'll go into details specifically about the Cure Om Registry. So it will be an online research study sponsored by the MRF and Cure Om. So going back to the grassroots fundraising, these dollars are being used to support our registry. It'll be led by a patient advocacy organization. That, of course, is the MRF. The powered by patient input and patient-reported data. So patient-reported data, again, is going to be anybody that has connection to the patient that is willing and able to input the information into the registry. So it's very important for us to think that survivors would input their information, but also anyone else that has information about somebody that's no longer here. That information is still very important for our registry. It'll have a principal investigator. So that's the individual that will oversee the study and provide feedback as into what types of questions may be important or what type of research may need to be done. It's developed in collaboration with the OM experts. More on that to come in the steering committee that will be overseeing the registry. The registry study is documented and all approved by an institutional review board. So again, there's a lot of activities that are going on in this registry that are beyond what us as patients can see. There is a lot of oversight to make sure that this is heavily controlled in terms of our own interest and our own secure information that we're putting in there, so it can't be used in malicious ways in how a SurveyMonkey questionnaire could be, perhaps. So collaborators will, with all research sectors for the best outcomes. So there is a various degrees of individuals that are on the review board that will oversee what we're doing. And strategically plan for achieving objectives, sharing results, and advancing research and long-term success. So what we've done so far, we've committed to fund and sponsor the patient-powered registry. We've raised the initial funds for the initiative. We're building resources and collaborations, including international parties. That would be AcuMel UK and the Melanoma Patients Australia. We've formed the multidisciplinary registry working group, as Sarah mentioned. So this includes a large number of different facets that will help oversee the registry. 4 ocular oncologists, 2 medical oncologists, 2 research nurses, 3 patients, who are all here today, 1 social worker, and 3 family members, 1 from the Huntersville cluster. We've assessed the registry platform providers, and we've compared nonprofit, private, and academic providers. And rounding out what we've completed so far, we've conducted a patient community questionnaire, which, as I mentioned, was last year, to input the direct initiative. There's collaboration underway to partner with the academic multi-center international research reported registry study. The working group has started development of the registry protocol and data set, and we've outlined potential collaborations with industry and initiated conversations with corporate sponsors, including accessing responses from a survey that was sent to them. So the next steps on what we'll be working for in the ensuing year from now until we meet again, we'll be working to complete the institutional review board approval of the registry protocol. We'll complete the registry data set, so again, which questions are we going to ask? We'll select the registry platform provider and agree specifics for patient registry in collaboration with the academic research reported registry. So this is a very important point. I would like to compare it to such as a marriage. Most people don't just jump up and get married and say, all right, this is my commitment forever. It's something that the working group is working on to make sure that we have a platform and we have funding that will sustain this for a foreseeable future of 3 to 5 years. We don't want to come in here and launch this and not be successful. So the 4th thing, we're securing sustainable funding, developing an online educational seminar for the patient community, develop a patient engagement and retention plan, develop IRB-approved communication material, a data management plan and data sharing policy, launching the registry and initiating day-to-day management. So this thing will need to be managed. It's not just set it and forget it, ask some questions and off we go. There's a lot of back-end work that'll need to be done after we start collecting these answers to the questions. What do we do with it next? And then, of course, what everyone would love to see is sharing the results of data with the patient community and the collaborators. With that, I will hand it over to Carla, who will kind of give an overview of what a patient registry may look like.
Okay, so what I'm going to go over is, like, once the registry launches, what steps are then going to be taken next. So first of all, you'll learn about the Cure Om Registry, and we'll do this by having educational online webinars with those people interested in even considering participating. The second step is register and create a registry account. You don't just log into the website and go at it, you know, answering these questions. You need to register, and we'll show a sample screen of that on the next slide. And then consent to participate in the study. This is very important as well. Everybody has to consent that they are willing to participate in this study. And then the step 4, take the study surveys and questionnaires, answer the questions in the data set. And then step 5, which is the most exciting to all of us, see the data results. So here's just a screenshot of, just for example, when you're first registering, once we do launch, you'll enter your name and your information, and then you'll have to associate it with email or a password so that you can access it going forward. And then the consent part, which is very important, includes the following steps. Consent will be from either the patient or a legally authorized representative. Say the patient is too ill to fill out the information about the patient's disease. Someone in the family hopefully will be willing and wanting to enter that information, so we have as much detailed information as possible, even for patients who, are not well at the time. Consent based on the registry protocol, and then the institutional review board has to approve everything, all of this that we are doing as well. So the summary of participation, the data safety and security and conditions of the informed consent. And then registered participants will consent by checking check a box stating that they understand that they're participating and are willing to take the surveys, answer the data set questions. So as an example, the patient registry data set may include, it's an organized in categories that include required and optional elements. And this might not be an all-inclusive, but for example, include the current contact information for the patient, the socio-demographic information, the diagnosis, what was the initial diagnosis? Because just in this room, we have, 20, 30 some patients and several different initial diagnoses. What is your family's history? The data set will include questions about that. The birth and reproductive history of the patient. Patient-reported outcomes. What have you tried as far as treatment goes, and how successful was it? Medications, devices, and health services that the patient takes on a regular basis or in the past or is planning. Clinical research participation and biospecimen donation. This is so important that we participate in clinical trials and donate our specimens. Like I, for example, have signed up with the University of Colorado to their tissue bank. So once I'm gone, they are going to take these darn tumors out of me and they are going to use them to study this disease. Communication and preference. And then communication and preferences. So on this screen, and like Chad had mentioned earlier, these are going to be sample graphs of the data that we'll get from the questions that are answered. And this is from a different patient registry, but this is the type of information we are hoping that we can gather. And this screen's a little small to read, but some of the others, like for example, this one is all the registry data shared this shows by state, like how many patients in each state have been diagnosed with the different disease. And then again, this isn't ocular melanoma based, but it shows the distribution of ages when the patients were initially diagnosed. Because like I was 44 when I was diagnosed, but just, I was diagnosed in 2004, and there's just so many younger patients, and it might just be because of awareness and because of what we're doing here that more people know about it, but it seems to me like there's more and more young people, even though the statistics don't show it at this time. And then here again, it's just an example of the data results. So some patient, like risk of recurrence for patients. There are some patients in the registry who do not want to know their risk due to the, but some people do. So this would, whatever information, data is entered, this will be able to show a risk of recurrence. Another example of things we're hoping to be able to share, to get from the results is current treatments of living patients. What kind of treatments are patients having, and what the numbers of the patients having the different types of treatments. And then as a review, the patient-powered registries offer new directions for patient-centered outcomes research and contribute to translational science in important ways. Experts agree that these registries are transforming patient and caregiver support and advocacy groups into research organizations. They also provide patients and family members another way to become engaged in research beyond the role of advisor or informant to researcher-generated studies.